This is a newspaper article, Chattanooga Times Free Press. It's about my father, C.E. Blevins. Here in his hands you can see he's got a lot of sandhill crane egg replicas that he's made. Here's another egg replica that he made, which is a great auk egg. And he called these species-specific replicas because he tried to make them the exact length, width, shape, and coloration of the real species. After starting this project about 20 years ago, he eventually made what we consider to be the world's largest collection of species-specific bird egg replicas, which we have in a museum now in Cohutta, Georgia. And on these shelves on the wall, what you're looking at is 1,200 species of 1,200 species-specific replications. 1,200 species represented, and each egg is made to exacting detail, as close as he could. And the reason he made these was because he knew how fragile real eggs are, and he also knew that birds have been negatively impacted by people collecting their eggs. This is an example of one species that suffered by the hands of man. It was the elephant bird of Madagascar. The great elephant bird of Madagascar became extinct in the late 1700s when explorers found their eggs. So this is the largest egg replica that we have. The species is now completely extinct. Also, this was what the great auk looked like. It was made extinct. But before it was made extinct, traders made big money selling the real eggs. People all over the world were really noted as the first oologists because they studied and collected real eggs. So my father's goal in making these species-specific replications was so people could hold them in their hands, learn about birds, learn about the importance of birds in a healthy, balanced ecosystem, and then they could learn that by being able to touch them instead of them being locked away in an air-conditioned cubicle somewhere. This is his replica of a hummingbird nest, and there's the smallest eggs we have, which is the ruby-throated hummingbird. Due to economics, we're going to have to close our museum. We have plans to move it to another entity, another nonprofit that can use it the way we've been using it, and we're hoping that they will have more numbers than we did. But what my dad did was he made one replica for each species, and as we look at these replicas, we can see relationships between the birds. Here we have the loons, the gannets, grebes, cormorants, and you can see how the herons, the egrets, and bitterns are related. And a good question to ask is, what is the reason for all these different colorations and different shapes of the eggs? And it turns out that form follows function. Birds that are cavity nesters, we find that their eggs are mostly white, because when the bird doesn't need protective coloration in its eggs, when she goes into that dark cavity, what she needs to do is be able to find her eggs. In the case of shorebirds, we say that their shape is more pauciform, more ovate. There's protective coloration, and These species will lay their eggs right on the sand or right on the gravel in a beach area, some right in a grassy area, and their eggs, if they were blown by the wind, would roll in a circle, or they would be more likely to roll in a circle than a rounded egg. So an oologist knows that by looking at the egg, the coloration, and the shape, can tell a lot about the habitat. These are examples of a common murre eggs. These 3, and then 3 more right here. This is a colony nesting bird. They nest in a group. They lay 1 egg at a time, and each hen lays an individually colored and marked egg, which helps her to find them when she comes back to the colony. The vultures and the condor and birds of prey don't have to worry so much about markings, although some of them are beautifully marked. The shape is much more rounded than you see in the ground nesting birds. We find that when people do come to the museum, they're quite surprised to see the variations in size and shape and coloration. And then when they see the entire collection, they get a sense of how much time C.E. Blevins spent. Here you see the contrast between the sandhill crane, which is on the left, and the whooping crane, which is on the right. Both have coloration that would protect them if they were laid in a grassy area down by the water. A lot of people are surprised by the shape and the coloration of a crow's egg. Being green and marked with splotches is real important to a crow, because she's going to lay her egg in a nest up in a tree, and it's very, very effective camouflage for her. It's a very beautiful egg. On the left you see the Mexican crow, then the fish crow, the Chihuahuan raven, and the common raven. And you can see that they're definitely related, but there are variations in the size and coloration and shape. The warbler's eggs are quite fascinating. And we don't get to see the warblers nesting in our area very much. This is a very important message. It is illegal to collect bird eggs, nests, and any bird part, including feathers, from any migratory bird. And that's what this museum is here to teach. Not only about the birds, but about how they're protected, why they're protected, and it's a good idea that they're protected. So we actually have U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Georgia Department of Natural Resources, and Tennessee Wildlife Resources permits to be able to collect these nests. There's a severe fine for collecting these without proper permits. So that's part of the story of migratory birds, is that humans interact with birds, and in so doing began buying and selling the nests and eggs, and then we can negatively impact the birds. This is a cardinal nest and some of my dad's cardinal replicas. The blue-gray gnatcatcher is a beautiful small bird we have in our area. She builds a nest like this. They're very good at collecting bugs. They decorate their nest with bark and make it look like part of the tree. For some of the larger birds, we were unable to climb the tall trees where the eggs were built, so we replicated our own. Great blue heron, common egret, red-shouldered hawk, common crow, mallard, common loon. Some of their eggs are brown, some are dark green. American coot, cattails, meadowlark, blue jay, great horned owl, common starling, wild turkey, red-tailed hawk. We find that birds we feel like this is a song sparrow nest. We find that they like to build right in the thickest briars. It gives them cover, keeps them from being attacked by other birds. Blue grosbeak. This is one of the last things my father did. He died a year and a half ago. He created this montage of 400 hummingbird nests. Each one has 2 eggs in it. Kids can't keep their hands off of this. As an artist, he had a vision. And that vision was to share nature's beauty by putting it in a place where you could compare and contrast. He saw an egg shape as perfect. And penguin eggs. And since an egg is perfect, a natural egg, it's real easy to see imperfections in a clay object. That's what he made these out of. This is a clay replica before it's been fired and painted. And it needs a little bit more work. And it took him a good while to figure out how to do this. And he worried about it and thought about it a lot. And he told the story about how he asked God to help him to make these shapes because they just seemed to be too perfect to replicate. So what he did was to create a tool to help him turn the eggs so they look more natural. Then he mixed after he fired it in a kiln, then he mixed the paint by hand and applied the paint individually by hand. None of this was high production. But he loved every one of them like they were each a unique creation. And the way he got into this, or the way it happened for him, was he was born in the country. This is his painting of the house he was born in Robbins, Tennessee. That's him that's supposed to be him under the porch, watching his parents plow a garden. So he painted these memories of his Appalachian upbringing. This was his uncle's house. The title for this one is his Uncle Houston's house in the coming storm. During the Depression, they moved to a farmhouse near Jasper, Tennessee, and they were sharecroppers. Another painting of them taking a dip in Sequatchie River in between plowing sessions. We have his paintings on display. We hope to be moving these to the next location too. This was one of the last paintings he did. It's the Blevins family tree. He called it a family beech tree. In it he did the research for as far as back as he could for the Blevins family. But it also shows the church where he was saved. The battleship that he served in World War II. He was an acting chaplain on the on a U.S. Navy ship. There's a lot of detail to this painting that's not at first not obvious. Many layers. Goes all the way from pioneer settlements to the space age. My wife Katie has helped us by taking the nest and the eggs and then putting the bird images with them, which makes it a really interesting display. House finch. So we have the, in some cases, verified nest, the egg replica, and then the image of the bird, which is very interesting for people to see. Tufted titmouse, cavity dweller. That's a real nest. They spend about 4 days on the nest. This house wren built in the accord right here on the Avian Learning Center property. Real pretty pink eggs. These house wrens, they cover the entire continent of South America in the wintertime. Great crested flycatcher. Black-billed cuckoo. Northern mockingbird. Olive-sided flycatcher. Yellow-breasted chat. And this is one of the interesting things that we've learned at the C.E. Blevins Avian Learning Center. We've learned if we let blackberries grow and let the grasses grow up and the wildflowers grow up, that we'll get different birds. We get more species of birds. Grackle. Dark-eyed junco. Ruby-throated hummingbird nest. Carolina wren. Brown thrasher. Mourning dove. Black-throated green warbler. American robin. Eastern towhee. The towhee is a beautiful bird nest right on the ground. This nest was on our property. In some of our nest collection, some of these nests are not verified. We're using them as representative of the kind of nest the bird will build. This is a nest that I found. This is a brown thrasher nest that I found this year. It's a verified brown thrasher nest. Some of our other nests we didn't see because they're so well hidden. This is another beautiful aspect of birds, is that they hide their nests behind leaves of the tree. This one has a snake skin wrapped in it, and we've read that the blue grosbeak actually is known for finding dead snake skins, not dead snake skins, but snake skins, and using them in their nest. My father was a school teacher and then later became a missionary. And at first he started out making simple clay objects that were just fun to hold in your hand, fun for kids. And then he progressed into making some owl shapes, bird shapes. These were made a long time ago. These were made back in the 60s. These are his ribbons that he got on the USS Waldron in World War II. He was a radio man. Some more of his paintings. This was a painting he did of his mother. Trying out different styles. Over the years, mostly he used watercolors. I've actually tried to get this collection appraised. But I can't seem to get anyone interested in appraising it because it worries the appraisers because they haven't seen a comparable. The name of the game these days seems to be using comparable sales information. And as I've been told a few times, there really is no comparable for the world's largest collection of species-specific bird replicas. We haven't found any comparables for the world's largest whooping crane egg that he and his friend Larry Cloud made it out of fiberglass, and my dad painted it. We call it the world's largest whooping crane egg. The actual whooping crane egg is much smaller. On the outside of our museum, the C.E. Blevins Avian Learning Center, my wife Katie has made these silhouettes, which are approximately life-size. We put them around the outside of the building. Spoonbill parrot. This is the wandering albatross. Has an 11-foot wingspan. Has the widest wingspan. California condor has a 9.5-foot wingspan. Is actually the biggest bird. And our habitat trail is getting kind of grown up. But this is where when we take school groups, we teach them to associate. And we're learning to associate species with a certain habitat. We have a southeastern grassland habitat, a pine and hardwood forest, and then we have also a wetland habitat. We've been calling our museum Exploration. We're located right now in Cohutta, Georgia. But as I mentioned earlier, we are moving. We were close to Red Clay State Park, the Cohutta Chattahoochee Scenic Byway, and the Cohutta Fisheries, all which are great places to visit. If you want to promote bird life and wildlife in general, let some of your property grow up. Bush hog it after the frost, and the migratory birds will have a lot more food to eat. You'll have all kinds of bird species eating on these pokeberries. Another good idea is to as a natural feeding for birds is to leave some rotting trees around, because there's lots of insects that live in there, and the birds feed on those. Brown beetles, termites, and so on. We have probably 7,000 egg blanks that he called them. Many of them haven't been fired yet and haven't been painted. So he was continually busy. And you can see from looking at these clay eggs that he would make them, if they were any size at all, he would make them hollow on the inside so they would dry out more thoroughly, and then they could be fired in the kiln once they were turned. He developed a lathe, which maybe I'll show on a follow-up video. The egg would be a rough shape, something similar to this. And he used tricks to get them close. Then he used this lathe, which would turn. Had a vacuum cleaner that would suck the egg down on it, and it would turn, suck the dust in through the hole in the center. He could vary the speed of it as it turned around, then he would use sandpaper to sand it down. Very time consuming, very painstaking work, very hard to get a shape that the human eye cannot detect imperfections on. This is his storage cabinet. This is sorted by millimeters. This millimeters refer to the width of the egg. So if he had somebody wanting to buy a replica that was 40 to 41 millimeters wide, he would pull it out and look at it and then check and see if the shape was the proper shape, because the shape had to be proper too. Some were much more pointed on the end, some were much more oval. These are egg shapes. Elliptical. Spherical on the left on the top, elliptical, cylindrical on the right. Short oval, oval in the center, long oval, center right, short power form, and long power form. In order to be species specific, not only the shape and the length and the width, but also the markings must be specific. From the top left going to the right, you see the wreathed, capped, overlaid, scrawled, streaked, marbled, dotted, spotted, and blotched. And this is part of the form-following function. A very interesting aspect of birds' eggs is shown in the cuckoo mimicry. The cuckoo lays her eggs in another species' nest. On the left you see the species that the cuckoo parasitized by laying an egg that's quite similar. It's thought that she parasitizes the nest of the species, or the species that the same nest that she was born in. These are examples of how closely they can parasitize, even though their egg is not the same size or the same shape. Here are some actual nests, each containing a single cuckoo egg, indicated by the arrow. Excuse me, not incubated. How does a bird change its color, the color of its egg? How does a bird determine the shape that its egg is going to be, and the coloration? How does a bird's egg impact a habitat, and how does the habitat impact the bird's egg. It's thought that this is a generational situation. Over the generations, minute changes occur which over time become more pronounced. This orchard oriole nest was in a weeping willow tree, and the way it was built, with the branches coming down, it was well hidden. So my dad, C.E. Blevins, he had a goal of providing a learning experience based on the biology of wild birds, and using the 1,200 approximate species of bird egg replicas that he made. The C.E. Blevins Avian Learning Center, which has been open here since 2007, will be continuing our mission elsewhere by transferring this collection to its new location.